Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins. Today on the podcast, we continue in our journey toward the start of school. Now, I know it's 1,000 degrees outside and we're not quite ready to begin to think about the start of school yet. But there are those among us who must always think about the start of school. Now, we often think of our campus ministers as having the summer off, but what I've learned over these conversations is that is just not true. And to continue in helping us get ready for school as they get ready for school, we are joined today by Corey Moses and Katie Lamoureux, two of our resident campus ministers, to help us get a further window into what your life is like. And to help you have a window into their lives, you need to know a couple of things. One, I am feeling underdressed today because I am the only person here without a forearm tattoo, which, you know, life goals. Next level, we can get there.
I can give you a number of a guy.
Okay, you got a guy. That's good. That's
I got
good.
a girl.
You got a girl? Okay.
There you go.
Perfect.
Got you covered.
We got connections and make it happen. You talk to my wife first, because, but my brother's ready for a tat, so we may have a guy who knows a guy. Anyway, but I'd love for you guys to just begin by sharing with us a little bit about who you are, and help us know the situation you're in, right? What campus ministry you're at. Katie's kind of wearing hers on her shirt today, so there's no doubt.
Represent.
Kind of share with us who you are, where you're at, how long you've been there, and kind of give us a window into kind of what stage of ministry your campus ministry is at right now. Corey, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I am at the Wesley Foundation at Tarleton State University. It's been an interesting shift. This is year 7 for me there at Tarleton, and as part of that, we experienced the pandemic just like everyone else, as well as a shift of Tarleton going from D2 to D1. And that has been a really interesting dynamic shift on campus and in the community because, you know, now we've had this shift where Stephenville is no longer dry, so there's liquor stores popping up. They're selling alcohol at the football games. Greek life was amped up to 11 as a result of D1 shift. And of course, it's also opening a lot of businesses for students that need part-time jobs and things like that. As far as the Wesley, I've always tried to kind of think outside the box. What are some things we could do differently? And so a couple years ago, we made a shift away from the kind of normal worship format, and now we offer a dinner church format where it's more of a dialogue, and we work as a community to put the meal together. And then a large part of what we do is our what I call nerd culture ministry and video games. And we can talk more about that later, or we can dive into it right now. But it's been
well, you just need to know I've got a little beef. Before we ever knew each other, I had beef with you because my youth director at one point was one of your former students who played video games with you all night long and then showed up to work real groggy. And I'm like, no, but it was because a real connection was made there, right? And so all jokes aside, it was because there was a real connection there.
And that's, you know, people that kind of aren't in that nerd culture world, they may or may not understand like the connections that are made, because for so long you had the church and you had the nerd world, and never the two shall meet. But now we have intentional ministries, some that are doing really amazing things that are saying, no, we're not going to have this thing and expect you to come to us, because personally, I don't believe that's what grace is. I think grace says we're going to meet you where you are. So if that's online behind a video game screen, then let's go play some video games together. Let's build a community together. Many of them that play with us, I will never meet face to face, but we have 50 people in our Discord right now that are interacting on one level or another. And it's not just some annoying pious punk 23 years old living in his mom's basement, right? It's somebody that's saying, hey, it's really cool that a church group, whether I want to be a part of a church group or not, but this church group is interested in investing in me. And because I think that's what ministry is. It's a faith-based, intentional community built on investing in one another over a common ground of a shared interest. And that's what we're trying to do at the Wesley.
Very good. Thank you, Corey. Now, Katie, you're at a very different stage. If you're in year 7, you're in month 7, right, Katie?
I think something like that. I started in February.
Okay.
So at a Wesley Foundation that is not quite a Wesley Foundation yet. So I was sent to kind of get that kind of started, and we just kind of did our first kickoff where we're getting all of that official. I'm really excited. So I've been part-time until July 1. And so now I'm like getting to do all the things and I'm super excited. I say part-time, but now I'm part-time because I also am an associate at First United Methodist Church of Belton, and I do their New Faith community, which is brunch church that's now called Open Table. But I can talk more about that. But the Wesley Foundation, I'm super excited. We're doing some launching. We've got all of our articles of incorporation in. We're doing all of the fun paperwork stuff now. So that's been my summer. He's talking about video games. I get to talk about paperwork, which is super thrilling and exciting. But we have in the past done a lot of video game stuff too. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I'm also in kind of the nerd world too. So I'm really excited. We're doing, our ministry is very different. We're at UMHB, which is a Baptist university. So we've got lots and lots of Baptist stuff that's going on, lots of stuff that's for that group of students, but we don't have a lot for the students that might be Methodist or other students that may not just have a little bit of a different belief system. And so we're creating this space for these students that just need something a little bit different, kind of like what you're talking about, meeting them where they are. Yeah. And not only are we like inviting our Methodist students, because we all know as campus ministers, they're usually not United Methodist walking in the door. They are sometimes, but a lot of times they just come from all different backgrounds. Right. Yeah. And so not only are we creating a United Methodist campus ministry, but we're creating an ecumenical one where we can have and partner with our Lutheran and our Episcopal and our Presbyterian friends. We can make, because we've got 4 Presbyterians and 4 Lutheran students, we bring them all together and we have a ministry that we can do things with. So we're really excited about doing that and partnering with other churches in the area as well.
One of the hallmarks of kind of the Wesleyan movement, right, or at least its modern expression, is this willingness to come to the table, right? It's simplified by the open table, right?
Yeah.
If you want to come receive grace today, you are welcome at this table, right?
Yeah.
That's right. In environments where, pop religiosity in the community is a more fundamental approach, that speaks volumes to so many students. I know, so I'm a proud Baylor Bear, sick 'em, right? And I've jokingly said that I like to call Waco Baptist Mecca, right? In part because it has a real function that way, right? Baylor's the world's largest Baptist institution, and in part because it makes them a little nuts.
Fair.
But there's also a reality that there is, like going through college, some of my best faith conversations happened with other Methodists, with the Roman Catholics. Like we created this cohort of people who are willing to come around the table and say, we don't have to all be of the same mind to have a similar heart and to have a really amazing conversation.
That's right.
I know we were talking a little bit before the camera started rolling that's kind of a hallmark of what you're hoping to build, but also what you're in the midst of building, right?
Right.
Help us understand what a week in the life of campus ministry looks like and how it may be different than like Youth Group 2.0 that we might think it might be that we send our college freshmen into as they leave our churches and go to their college campuses.
Well, so the big difference is, because I've kind of run into this dichotomy with a couple of my students over the past couple of years, is we would have one student that grew up in a very prominent church in our conference and had a very specific experience in her youth group in high school and came to the Wesley assuming that that's what college campus ministry was going to be like. Yeah. And part of it, I mean, the logistical side of it was, when you're in a high school youth group and your youth director says, "Hey, you're my leader and you're in charge of whatever, social media."
Right.
Well, what that youth director is saying is, "You're going to help me do this."
Right.
Whereas me, when I look to my leaders and I say, "Hey, you're on my leadership team in charge of our social media," I'm not going to touch it.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, this is your baby. You put your team together, because I'm also passionate about leadership development.
Yeah.
And so it's just been a really interesting thing for our students to kind of step aside. But at the same time, I have very few students that are Methodist currently. And probably half of my group that comes on a Tuesday night will tell you I don't identify as Christian and I'm not necessarily interested in doing that at all. Because when we meet them on campus, the first thing they say is, well, I'm not really religious and I don't really want anything to do with the church. And I typically say, well, that's fine. We're just having a free meal. Come eat.
Right.
And so it's because it's not about converting people for me. It's about, again, investing in people and building a community.
And how does that sit within kind of the default ethos of your community? And where is that a distinctive?
So at Tarleton, the last I counted, there are 13 campus ministries.
Okay.
And to simplify it, I can say 9 of them are Baptist. Some of them may argue with that, but there's cowboy churches, there's non-denominationals, there's Baptist in the name. They're all Baptist.
Fundamentally evangelical.
Exactly. To quote, I forget the guy's name, but there's a comedian that said non-denominational is just Baptist with a cool website.
Right.
But the difference in us is, so many of them, their goal is, we're going to convert you, we're going to baptize you, we're going to make you Christian. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's something as United Methodists we all believe is important. And we're disciples of Jesus. We believe we're called to make more disciples. And so the difference for me personally, though, is the measurable, quantifiable is not necessarily how many baptisms do you have, how many people do you have in the seat, but more so it's how many people are starting to ask questions or even be interested in taking that next step in their personal faith journey.
Yeah.
And, for some that we get, the very first step is to help them understand that maybe the church is not the enemy.
Yeah.
But for others, I have students that are thinking maybe it's ordained ministry.
Yeah.
And anywhere in between those two extremes. I have one young lady that when we first met her, she was one of those, I've had a bad experience growing up in a church. That's not really my cup of tea. I said, that's fine. You're here for a job interview. I need someone to clean the building. And she inevitably, because she was out of kind of that church world and she didn't really understand the kind of practice of how we would be in worship and that sort of thing. And so she was cleaning while we were in worship. And then she was cleaning again while we were in worship. And then she started coming to free lunch. Then she started building relationships. By the end of that second semester, she was hired by Project Transformation. And she's asking me, do you have books on what the United Methodist Church teaches about ... I said, do I?
I got a whole library right here. I got books, I got podcasts, I got videos, I got all the things you might want or need. Yeah.
But here's the thing that she said to me as we got to the end of that conversation. Now, I don't want to take up all of our time. I'll end with this and then I'll let you talk. Because it's really profound. She said, I'm so glad that I found the Wesley because I never knew that churches could not be jerks to people.
Yeah. Well, that invitation, right? And her experience is so radical. I'm having, the joy of my seat in these conversations, right? Is I get to have these conversations with all of our campus ministry folks.
Yeah.
And your story is so radically similar to one Eddie told me just the other day, right? Of a young person who'd been burned by the church and who came. I can't remember if the cameras were rolling when he was telling me the story or not, but came and said, I'm staying as long as the food is good and they don't try to control me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a year later, she's still there.
Yeah.
And a year later, she's working for PT.
That's right.
And a year, it's like, it's these ready to ask the questions. What does it mean to follow Jesus in this tradition?
That's exactly
in
right.
a way that is different. I love the role and purpose of questions in the midst of this.
I agree.
Right? Because so often we receive questions as like an expression of doubt when really it's an expression of engagement, right? It's a sign that you care deeply enough to not just go, okay, cool. But to go, now wait, help me unpack that.
Right.
Give me space to understand that. Give me freedom to engage in this conversation in a deep and meaningful way that will challenge some things, that will disrupt some things, right? Yeah. But that will also lead to life change, right? Within broader Christianity today, we're experiencing a lot of conversation around deconstruction, right? Within fundamental evangelical circles, right? This conversation of deconstruction, what does that look like? And the more I've read into it, the more I've heard people ask the questions that they're asking and getting labeled as deconstruction. I'm like, oh, you've become good United Methodists and you just don't know it yet.
That's right.
That's a lot of where my students are, is because they've got this really strong basis of faith, but they're not sure that they've got this, it's all black and white to them, and then they're asking these questions and maybe that's not okay. And we create a space where, oh my gosh, it's okay. It's totally okay to ask those questions. So kind of a similar situation, but not in mine. And we get people who are just a different faith, a different part of Christianity, and they are okay, these are questions are allowed to happen, and I can meet you where you are, and you're not going to be shunned, you're not going to be pushed out, and it's okay for you to be in that space, in this space. And so that's where we're at. But we have a little bit of kind of the similar stuff, but First United Methodist Church of Belton has been feeding, this is so cool, y'all. They've been feeding college students for 17 years. We call
Nice.
This is great. And I've been told I'm not allowed to call my Wesley this, but all of the students at UMHB call it the meth house.
There's reasons why you can't call it that, but
it's fine. It's so funny because when that started happening, the pastor actually had to go to the campus police and be like, okay, this is what the meth house is. I promise we're just United Methodist. And so, but for 17 years, we feed between 200 and 250 students every week.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's it. We just feed them. They come, we're about maybe a half a mile from the campus, and they drive and they get there and y'all, it is good food. I eat very well on Wednesdays. When I hang out, I'm like, this is my favorite day. They just come in. They come in like in 2 waves at 11 and I think 11 and 12. And it depends on who's preaching at chapel and what's going on. But we fill our family life center twice over. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And we don't offer them anything but food. Good. I'm telling y'all, it's good food. And it's great.
How's the food?
It's great. Did I say that already? I can't remember. But it's so cool just to see them to come in, and that's all. And they love on, it's like 15 to 20 retired people who come in and serve, and they love on these students, love on the retired people, and the retired people love on them. It's incredible to watch that. And so I think that's a really great way where we look at the church and the Wesley Foundation working together, because that's always it's always a question, right? The churches are like, how can we support it? And I'm sure that was a question that you asked us also. How can we support a church, a Wesley foundation? And just simply to kind of be there a lot of the times. I think another way is to ask. I don't know. Do you get asked a lot?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting asked, and I think that's really important because they can just offer things. But to ask, we got a list. I know I have a list.
We have an Amazon wish list.
Yeah, we have lists. I have lists everywhere of like, what do you need? Oh,
I got you.
let me tell you. Yeah.
So college ministries are like college students. What do they need? Food and money.
Food and money.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Well, and you touched on something that's really important in campus ministry, because so many of our students, it's the first time in their life that they're not somebody's son or daughter. And so they're taken out of this kind of bubble worldview, many of them, where their family of origin is saying, this is who we are, this is the church that we go to, this is what we believe, this is our politics, this is who we are.
Right.
And a lot of them, they go to college, and for the first time they're faced with these questions of, what if I don't believe that?
Or I don't have to go to church every Sunday. That's actually an option.
And the really tough time for some of them is they may or may not have grown up in a setting to where if they start asking those questions, it means it's really detrimental to their faith, and the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. And to use the big fancy buzzword, deconstruction happens, and they stop there.
Right.
But what's really exciting with a lot of my students is, and you probably experienced this, all of our campus ministers experience this, is we get the privilege of watching and helping guide those students through the process of reconstruction, of being that space where we can have those conversations and those dialogues. Maybe there's an answer, maybe there's not, but the question is okay. Yes. And I tell them all the time, if you're not struggling with your faith, then you're not taking it seriously.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, as we're having this conversation, last night I had a Bible study full of 60 and 70-year-olds with a few of us that didn't quite qualify, right? But the foundational piece of it, the book we were reading raised some really provocative questions on purpose, right? And it was amazing to sit in a room of people willing to engage, right? And that's a muscle that you have to work, right? It's not one that just comes, right? It's one you've got to be willing to work, and to see it happening in our ministries with folks 18 to 22 and folks 60 to 85, and it's still okay, is a powerful part of kind of who we are as Wesleyans, right?
Absolutely.
where do you see some of those Wesleyan distinctives alive and at work in our campus ministry? Because as you said, right, there's 9 other, we'll call them broadly fundamentally evangelical campus ministries at Tarleton, right? And UMHB is UMHB,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
It's Southern Baptist in its essence, and probably doesn't need another Southern Baptist expression of campus ministry, right? And so what are some of those Wesleyan distinctives that that you kind of say, this forms who we are, and this is what we hang our hat on as we engage our kids? I say kids, our young adults.
Young adults, there we go, yeah.
There we go.
Students.
And the community around you.
Yeah.
I think you said something really beautiful about grace before we started. So I'm going to let you start with that.
What did I say?
What you said? I don't remember exactly what you said.
Oh,
you said
about
it's so
meeting
great.
them where they are. Yeah. Because I do. I think one of the distinctive things that we understand about grace is that I understand about grace, but is that grace is about meeting people where they are. And it's one thing to say, hey, we've got this great program and this great activity. Why don't you come to us? Well, they may or may not do that. But especially in terms of like our nerd ministry and our video games, if many of them that are involved heavily in the gaming world, they're rarely going to leave the soft glow in the dark of their monitor or their TV or the Xbox.
Right.
And that's fine. Come join our Discord. Join us in the video games online. We'll meet you there.
Yeah.
We may or may not see them face to face, but we're going to build a relationship with you.
Right.
And it's, and I know that this is, I came across some staggering statistics recently. The game, now I understand these two things are not apples to apples. One is a hobby, one is a major religion, but the gaming world outnumbers Christianity by almost 1 billion people in the world.
Okay.
Over the past 4 years, the gaming industry has grown by almost an average of 125 million people a year, every year for the past 4 years.
Huh.
A Gallup poll as of 2021 showed that the average U.S. church attendance has fallen below 50%. So, and what's really cool is that there are people out there, there are ministries out there that are saying, because you matter to God, not only do you matter to us, but we want to meet you where you are.
Yeah.
And that, and just the dedication to asking questions. And maybe there's an answer, maybe there's not. But, I didn't grow up Methodist. And one of the things that I love the most about coming to the Methodist Church was our love for questions and our love for dialogue.
Yeah.
And our love for not necessarily having to deal in absolutes, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that.
Generous orthodoxy and a spirit of radical curiosity.
Absolutely.
Like that. We're not working in absolutes. And I think that's really important. I mean, and where I'm at, we're helping people, and I think I've already said this, but we're helping people who are probably mostly Christian, and we have what we offer, what we're trying to offer is something different. Is something. If you have these beliefs that are UMHB beliefs, then you have all these wonderful options. But if you grew up United Methodist, or if you grew up Lutheran or Episcopal, you don't have a space that you like that would be for you. And so that's what we're hoping to build. And we are currently building is to have a space that has just a little bit of a different option for those, and to be able to ask again, that's where we're at, is to be able to meet people where they are, and to be able to let them and allow them to ask those questions that they might not have felt comfortable, in their family of origin or in their church and whatever. And so I think that's a lot of campus ministries, though. I think we was creating that just culture of curiosity to be able to ask those questions and do that.
And for a lot of them, it's not even faith questions. It's identity questions.
Absolutely.
It's who am I out in this world? Apart
Which
from
at its core is a faith question, according to those of us who are preacher nerds, right? It's like if we're getting to the core of our identity, we're getting to who God is.
That's right.
But it doesn't come to you as a faith question, right? But it can help guide in that. Katie, as you were talking, I love, Corey's pushing us to meet people where they are, but you're reminding us of that Wesleyan grace, right? God meets us where we are, but doesn't leave us there.
Exactly.
Right? That doesn't let us
100%.
stay in that same spot, but creates a space for us to kind of have this expansive growth.
Take those next steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Adam Hamilton is either your homeboy or you've had way too much of Adam Hamilton over the years. Some of his language that I find really helpful in these kind of conversations is when they talk about the purpose of core. Part of what they talk about is the distinction to not just to invest in non-religious folks, but to invest in non and nominally religious folks so that they might become deeply committed Christians, right?
That's right.
That idea, because in the spaces we live in the buckle of the Bible Belt, right? It's Texas.
Yeah.
If you ask the overwhelming majority of folks, what faith do you connect to, right? Especially of a certain generation, it's overwhelmingly Christian, right? But that space between nominally Christian and deeply committed Christian, right? Whose life is transformed and whose community is transformed because of what God is doing in them. That's the space you guys are inhabiting, right?
That's right.
And I love having y'all on, right? Because for a year and a half, the bishop's been pushing us to ask the question, how can we be good ancestors for the generation that follows us,
I
right?
love that.
And you guys are at the epicenter of some of that powerful work right now, right? The work happening at Glen Lake Camp is a huge part of that. The work happening on our mission trips and with our student ministry is a huge part of that. But what you guys are doing as people are at that inflection point, right? As life has gotten real, as they're out of their bubble, as relationships are like not kid relationships anymore, they're adult relationships, and like there is freedom, but there's consequences, and how do we navigate all of that?
That's so good. I love how you said at the epicenter, because I always, when I talk to people, I always talk about the fringe. I said campus ministers and extension ministry is always on the fringe because we're on the fringe of the world and the Christian community. So we get to, it's like we're in both, and we get to walk in both of these spaces, and it's really a beautiful space to be in because you get to navigate the world outside of this Christian world, but you're also, I mean, like we're all pastors, right? So we're definitely in the Christian world, and so we get to walk this really unique space that is right on the fringe, and I always like to call it like kind of the fringe of the Christianity, which is super important because when we get to see what's happening out here. I guess you can't see out here. Out here, if you can, or if you're watching the video, you can see it, and also inside the Christian world. And I think that's really important, and that we're kind of talking to those people in the extension ministries who are on the fringe, and that it really is the epicenter. I really appreciate you saying that. I really like that.
Well, and I'm a deacon, and so I like to use the image of the bridge, right? Yeah. So to me, campus ministry very beautifully sums up like the role of the deacon to bridge that gap. Because my job is to bridge the gap of the world of Tarleton State University with the church. And for some that bridge is broken. And so for some, for some, our first work that we have to do, at least in my experience at Tarleton, is we've got to help them repair that bridge first because of the experiences they may have had in other churches or in their church growing up, or from the way that God's people may have treated them, and they thought it was the church. So there is beauty in what you guys are doing. Day by day. And I love, Corey, I'd forgotten that you were a deacon, because as you were talking, I'm like, oh, you're just describing the deacon. That's what you're describing right there. Right? The work of the deacon is to live at that epicenter, right? And so often in overly churchy circles, we think of the deacon as the missions person, right? Or we think of the deacon as the church musician or whatever. But campus ministry is a place where whether you are a deacon or you're functioning in this way, you are living as that bridge. That's right.
Campus ministry sounds like a lot. And like a beautiful lot.
Oh, it's wonderful.
But a lot.
And a lot.
It works well with ADHD.
Oh, no. Is that why I'm enjoying it so much?
Well, because the thing, and it's what I love about one thing. I love many things about it, but the thing about campus ministry is, man, when it's on, you are on.
Yes.
And then they all go home and everything stops and you can breathe and rest and get some work done.
Wait, when do we do that? I haven't done that yet.
So when you're not meeting with lawyers all summer long to get incorporation papers done.
I'm so excited.
Well, so my background is not campus ministry. It was church music. And my first semester I would talk with people and they're like, hey, what's campus ministry like? And I would always say, well, imagine the chaos and madness of the Advent season in the local church.
Yep.
And then at any given moment, 30% of your church membership is in your office. For 3 months.
Okay.
And then you get a break.
Yeah.
And then you do it again. And then you get a summer break to plan, write grants, all that, and rest, and then it starts over again.
You mentioned a couple of things that I want to unpack here a little bit. Not the ADHD thing, although I think it makes a lot of sense as somebody who lives in that world too. But the the idea of writing grants, the idea of, you joked earlier that, we could always use money and food, right? From the outside looking in, and as somebody who spent their entire ministry in churches but did church planting for a season, right? There's an element of like hustle to campus ministry, and I mean that in the most endearing way, right? Not that but there's
a reality.
There's a entrepreneurial spirit in the midst of campus ministry. What has been like the most creative way to raise money that you've tried and it thrived, and you were like, yes, I'm a genius. This is amazing. This is perfect. And what is the thing that you thought was beauty and ended up being just broken hot mess? It didn't work at all. Give us a window into kind of that creative mindset that is just required to do the job you do.
Well, so the thing that worked the best, I actually can't take credit for it, but it was for the Wesley, and it was, I'm going to shout out to David McMinn because when he was there, the board of directors did a wine tasting event. And they rented out a really fancy house there in Morgan Mill, and it did really well. The thing that we've tried that just was like little to no effort, but brought in $1,000 without even trying was did a used shoe drive. And we just asked, because there's a Funds to Orgs is organization, and you just collect these shoes from people for a 3-month period of time, find a storage room to store them, and then you go through them, take out the ones that you can't use and whatnot, and then they send a guy in a semi-truck, and if you give them so many bags or so many pounds of bags of shoes, they write you a check, because then they take these shoes, recondition them, and then send them to third world countries and sell them and things like that.
Because how many shoes just get dropped in a Goodwill bucket somewhere when it can turn into money for campus ministry?
So many shoes. And we just
did that closet have a funk to it?
Well, it wasn't a closet; it was a room, and yes, it did. It was because it was also over the summer, and so
it just sat there.
Oh man, because there's a lot of athletic shoes, a lot of boots. Oh man,
that's inside and outside smell.
Through no lack of trying though. Because our local churches, they're trying, right?
Yeah.
Our churches, our pastors are diligently doing the best that they can. But man, the old model of Wesley Sundays fundraising in churches, it's not as successful as it has been. Not that pastors don't want to be; they very much want to be supportive. Yeah. But the reality of disaffiliations and budgets and everything else, that's becoming more of a struggle. So I'm having to think a little more out of the box, a little more creatively. What are some non-conventional funding options, that sort of thing, that's still not illegal?
Yeah, fair. Well,
oh my God.
I love, so for those of you who don't know, Dustin, who produces this, who's mad that I mentioned his name and I'm staring into the camera right now talking about him, he is a huge Halloween guy, right? Like his front yard is crazy come Halloween. And y'all were talking ahead of time about an idea you got for this year, just to give us a window into what this entrepreneurial spirit looks like, and that could raise some money for the Wesley Foundation.
So we're gonna partner with the theater department at Tarleton and transform the Wesley into a haunted house for the community. Charge admission for people to walk through it. Scare the heck out of some kids as they're walking through for $5 a pop.
Hey,
or 20. I don't know.
Right. Get the calculator out ahead of time. It's like, all right, how much? We need to raise $10,000. Okay, then it's going to be $750 a kid.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, other thing, it's just a matter of being very entrepreneurial. What merchandise can we get that people are going to want to buy? Stickers, mugs, T-shirts. And then it's, part of it is kind of creatively telling the narrative.
Yeah.
Yes.
To where people are going to say, you know what, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I want to partner with you because it sounds like what you're doing is valuable and it's changing lives, because it is. Because the thing that I love the most about campus ministry is getting to watch firsthand God's transformative power at work in the lives of these students. To see a student that shows up as a young budding freshman and then 4 years later, as the most introverted person I've ever met in my life.
Okay.
And 4 years later, he's saying, "Hey, can I stand in front of a church and tell my story?" And he's just not in any way the same guy, in the best way.
Yeah.
I think that's really like what we're doing as we talk to churches and stuff like that is sharing the story. What stories do you have to tell? And I think that's making the biggest impact, because the reality is the students are probably not going to show up on Sunday morning. And sometimes that's hard for churches to like grasp that reality. Yeah. But you're still, whatever type of support a church gives a campus ministry, you're still helping us do that work, even if it's not on Sunday morning. It is vital work. And I think
That's right.
And I think that's really important for churches to know, is that even if they don't show up on Sunday morning, being able to support a Wesley Foundation does some really, really transformative work.
That's right.
And I sit in a really cool space because I get to do both.
Yeah.
I get to do a New Faith community at First Belton, and I get to do a Wesley Foundation. And so I get to see how a church and a Wesley Foundation can work together. And so I get to just try it all, see what works, see what not works. Maybe you can invite me back and I can tell you all the things that didn't work in the next year or did work. We don't know.
Just know we expect there to be alpacas involved.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that is the expectation.
Alpaca races.
There you go.
Like ride them.
Right, yeah.
Oh, you should come over and see if you could ride my alpaca.
Challenge
I'd like
accepted.
I'd like to get a video of that.
That's a fundraising
That's
opportunity.
it. Hey, you're talking to the guy who did donkey basketball when I was in Meridian. So, anything
So we're
for the
taking
kids.
pledges, $10 a minute for how long Corey can stay on the alpaca.
Oh my gosh.
I'd say $10 a second.
Yeah, that sounds a little more accurate.
It's not quite bull riding, but it's close.
Oh my gosh.
So, well, thank you both so much for
you
being here
bet.
today.
Thank you for
It has
having
been
me.
a
Absolutely.
fantastic gift. I hope and pray that this has been a gift to your spirit and your soul as we enter into this season. The other thing I would add, continue to be in prayer with and for our campus ministries.
Please, yeah.
This work is highly relational, and yet there's no denying that God is alive and at work in it, transforming the world and making disciples one person at a time. As we continue in this series, we're going to hear from more of our amazing campus ministers, a couple of whom got shout outs already today. And we hope and pray you join us. If this has been a conversation that's been meaningful to you, important to you, and you want to make sure and share it, please share it on all the social platforms. It's a reason why it's on Facebook. There's a reason why clips will be on Instagram and other places. Share this, because this is a way in which we are being good ancestors for those who come after us. If you're a podcast person and you know what Spotify is, or what Apple Podcast is, or if you know where you might find all of your podcast in the normal podcast apps, it's in every one of those places. So make sure you hit us up there. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast in that place, but also leave a review in that space. That helps more and more people encounter this and experience this. If you're with us on Facebook or on YouTube, leave a comment. Comment anything. Tell us your favorite moment of this podcast. Tell us how many seconds you think Corey can make it on an alpaca.
We're taking donations now.
Right, we're taking donations now. Just let us know that that's a way that this thing helps the conversation continue, not just in this space and in this time, but far beyond this moment. Until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins, and this has been Pod Strangely Warmed. We made Vance laugh several times, so that's a win.
Good job.